I'm Steve Martin, and I want to tell you a little bit about myself because I believe that when you think about that, when you're considering what someone will do in the future, you need to understand what they've done in the past and what's guided them in that process. I was born in Chesterfield County in a family of 8 children. My father had a little construction company, actually focused on ceramic, quarry and slate, flooring and tile, and ran a few crews. And when I was 9 years old, he decided he felt called into the ministry, and we moved us to a farm in Mecklenburg County in Southside, Virginia. He kept the business going for purposes of providing cash flow. We farmed for food, and boy did we farm. Never had anything. He said he planted a little bit of something. He didn't know what a little bit of anything was. The least potatoes we ever dug were 19 bushels. I remember the occasion. But in any event, he planted churches across Southside Virginia, from down towards the Suffolk area, out towards Danville, and up into the Tri-Cities area. And that's the environment in which I was raised. My family is somewhat of a musical family, and shoot, I was singing live in radio studios by the time I was age 9. My dad passed away when I was 17 years old. My mom had not worked outside the home for 23 years. Still had 5 young sisters at home, and even though I had a couple of scholarships, partial scholarships to go off to school, I found it necessary to come home and help Mom and the girls out. And so I did. Worked in the construction field with a blue-collar family, and talking about having to work hard to make ends meet, we certainly did. And I went, after about 6 years in the electrical business, well, not quite that long, about 5 years. Went into intended to move to DuPont for the purpose of going in industrial electricity. After being there for about 6 years, left and went into the insurance business. What a change. But I worked hard. I had to provide for my family, so in the early years I was very successful with it. A few years later, locally, my folks began to ask me to run for legislature, and I did so. Now, what brought me into the political process was the life issue. As a matter of fact, when Jerry Falwell formed the Moral Majority, I went to work for Jerry in writing and organizing turnout at mass meetings and conventions around the state. As a matter of fact, since Ollie North was brought up, I gave the nominating speech at that Guinness Book of World Records convention for Ollie North in 1994, and headed up the church and pastors' effort statewide for Ollie North's campaign. But in any event, so I was elected in 1987, and since that point, what has guided me, the principles of limited government, free enterprise, competition in the marketplace, individual liberty with an insistence on personal responsibility. And the reason I can say that so clearly and so easily is my first letter of every campaign has had that as its opening paragraph. The voters have a choice. You have a choice. You have an opportunity to recommit yourself to the principles of limited government, free enterprise, competition in the marketplace, individual liberty with an insistence on personal responsibility. When I first got to the House of Delegates, there were only 34 Republicans, and not all of us were conservatives, trust me. And so I started introducing things like informed consent legislation, parental consent, parental notification, welfare reform, a repeal of marriage tax penalty, education choice, education accountability. It wasn't going anywhere, it was going to die, but what happened was we were able to run successfully Republicans and start picking up seats. And I remember the first time I met Bob McDonnell. I was assigned as his mentor when he was first elected, and he said, "Oh, so you're Steve Martin. It's finally good to meet you. Thank you for all the ammunition." And so I appreciated that. And in the mid-90s, George Allen asked me to chief patron his welfare reform legislation that became a model for our nation. I was the only legislator in the nation called to testify before both the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee on the issue of welfare reform and block granting, which we finally, on the third effort, got Bill Clinton to finally sign it. He took credit for it, but on the third attempt. But in any event, that is my track record. I was all. You know, at both ends of, you want to call it a political career, I've been in office for a little while. I've served in the Senate now, I've just entered my 20th year, I guess, in the Senate. But in any event, the Education and Health Committee had never had a social conservative on it, not even a conservative. The VEA, as has been said, the Education Association, and Planned Parenthood controlled that committee. The Senate was held up in its organization and shut down for 2.5 days because they did not want the very first conservative put on that committee. That was me. I now chair that committee. We've been able to kill the attacks on life, and last year we were able to get some great successes on life issues. This year we've been able to get all of the governor's education choice and education accountability bills passed. We do have the charter schools is a problem, which we're going to talk about later. We've got a piece of legislation going through to fix that now. I chair that committee, and it really falls to my shoulders. I have to bear the burdens. I do not have a perfect record. You'll be able to find a couple of votes I've cast wrong that I am so sorry for. And I'll be able to, but surely, I don't have a perfect record. But you know what guides me, and you know that you can have confidence in me. The Richmond Times-Dispatch in 1991 said I was one of the faithful five in the House of Delegates fighting the tax and spend and expansion of government efforts in Blyle's and Wilder's administrations. They did so again just a few years ago, saying I was a senior member of the faithful five in the Senate doing the same battle. When I pick up the gavel, I will know what I'm doing and what's going on around me, and you can look at my record and tell from that record what I'm going to do. As a candidate, I will do well. I've had 10 successful races, and I ran the joint Republican caucus through the years that we became a majority both in the House and in the Senate. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.